mention in Rolling Stone about another note that he wrote to you.
It's like a letter,
Yeah.
and it's not really like a suicide note. It's like, it seems more like it was like in a sealed envelope, and it was just like to me, and it seems like he wrote it in rehab.
Where'd you find it? Where'd you get it?
It was in my bedroom under my pillows.
Under your pillows?
Yeah. And I didn't tell anybody about it but Rosemary, and I told Sergeant Cameron about it.
Yeah.
I let him see it.
There's only one problem with that, Courtney.
What?
I looked under your pillows, just like we looked under your mattresses. That's how I found the rape note between your mattresses. That note wasn't under your pillows on the bed.
It was, and I showed it to Sergeant Cameron, and he can tell, he can prove it. I own it. I'll show it to you, if you want to see it.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it, but what I'm telling you is it was not there the night before the body was found, or the night before that, because you can ask Dylan about this. We took the pillows up. We were looking for drugs. We looked under the mattresses. That's where the rape note was. There was no note in it.
Right. It was in a long legal envelope, white envelope that was sealed. It had my name on it, and it was definitely Kurt's writing, and it was right under my pillows.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I have a bunch of pillows on that bed, and it was right there.
All I can say to that, Courtney, is if you say so, that I looked.
That is a clip from the 2015 documentary that's called Soaked in Bleach. How many of you have seen that? That posits that Courtney Love actually had Kurt Cobain murdered and he didn't commit suicide. We're going to touch upon that conspiracy theory towards the end. But, I never cease to be amazed at no matter how much I study this, there's always new people that come along that seem to, particularly in Hollywood, that seem to have had some cursory connection with Scientology, even if it's brief. It seems like there's more celebrities in Hollywood that have not had a brush with Scientology than probably frickin' have. So let's start off with with Courtney Love and her brush with Scientology. And you're going to hear it from the horse's mouth, as I did an interview with a gal that actually picked up the phone at Narconon when Courtney called to get Kurt in. So let us get started, shall we, my friends? So how did she get involved in Scientology? Or did she? She'll deny it, but let's start here. Here's 4 stars you didn't know were connected to Scientology, and we covered this a couple days ago. You guys know about Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith. Do you know that Skrillex, also, while not a Scientologist, has family members in? And I might as well read this real quick. So, of course, over the course of his career, Skrillex has released some science fiction-themed music videos. He's a musician, like electronic artist. So it makes sense that he would have some connection to a UFO religion. Skrillex was raised a Scientologist, and his parents continued to practice that religion. He has said that he does not practice Scientology because doing so would take too much time away from his work as a musician. However, he has no issue with the church. He feels that the affairs of the Church of Scientology are sensationalized and that people should not judge members of the church for finding something that makes them happy. And how often have we heard that, my friends? Until you look into it, I would say to Skrillex, why don't you look into it? Why don't you watch Leah Remini's Scientology Aftermath? It's not good enough to just say that my family's in it, I don't have a problem with it, and people should be allowed to believe whatever they want. Anyways, continuing on. So here we get into Courtney Love, another lesser known, previously, quote unquote, practicing Scientologist. So from her well-publicized romances to her feud with Marilyn Manson, Courtney Love has lived one interesting life. That's one way of putting it. Part of that life is the Church of Scientology. Following a stint in rehab, and we'll get into that, the singer wanted to find something that would help to end her addiction. She took a Scientology course, which she claims prevented her from ever wanting to use drugs again. Well, that didn't work out too well. She would go on to thank the church, as well as one of its most prominent members, Kirstie Alley, in the liner notes for her debut solo album, America's Sweetheart. According to a spokesperson, the church was surprised that they were thanked in the album's liner notes. Here's another little thing. Is Courtney Love turning to Scientology? Has Courtney Love been turning to the Church of Scientology for help? The trouble, this is back in the past, by the way. This isn't recently, and we'll do a little timeline going back to 1991 up to an interview that she did about a year ago when the subject of Scientology and other things came up. So the troubled rocker, who recently served a stint in rehab and has been battling for the custody of her daughter, thanks Scientology and Kirstie Alley in the liner notes of her new CD, America's Sweetheart. Alley is a spokeswoman for Narconon. She was, RIP, a drug treatment program based on the teachings of Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard. Alley has credited Scientology with helping her overcome her own drug problems. By the way, this is how a lot of people get into Scientology. They're not necessarily just a bunch of dumbasses. They, if you don't know that Narconon is Scientology, which is how Kirstie Alley, she did their drug rehabilitation program and some auditing. Courtney Love might not have known when she tried to get Kurt Cobain into Narconon that it was a Scientology facility, but I doubt it because she's fucking friends with Kirstie, as you're going to hear later, and she's running with this crowd. But if you don't know it's Scientology, and Hubbard purposely picked the name Narconon to sound like Al-Anon, to sound like Narcotics Anonymous, so that you'll get it mixed up when you're looking in the yellow pages back in the day, or you're going on the internet today. It doesn't say that it's Scientology. It sounds legitimate just by the name. So people aren't necessarily dumb by getting sucked into Scientology. They have a lot of front groups where you can be introduced to stuff that seems to get you off drugs, like it did me. But we've talked about that before, so I'm not encouraging anybody to do their dangerous pseudo drug rehabilitation program. Totally fake, totally dangerous, called the Purification Rundown when you're in the church, and Narconon when you get sucked in by, just like I said, going online. So that's the first step, their front groups often, to get somebody to go up that bridge where years later they turn into a complete dumbass. So Alley is the spokeswoman for Narconon. She was a very outspoken spokesperson because, again, it helped her get off coke and such. A drug treatment program based on the teachings of Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard. Alley has credited Scientology with helping her overcome her own drug problems. Quote, "I didn't want to do drugs anymore, but I didn't want to love life without doing drugs, and life was just being squelched out of me. It was a slow death. I had one auditing session in Scientology, and I never did drugs again or had the urge to do drugs again. Again, I've said this a million times. When I got off drugs, I felt like I was getting high without getting high by doing their auditing. I did their purification rundown 3 fucking times. And also my dad, for example, I wouldn't say he was an alcoholic, but he would drink often after work. And he had a very intimidating presence. He never physically laid a hand on me, but he didn't have to. It was just the way that he looked at me. But when he got into Scientology, he immediately quit drinking and he became a more shut down, robotic version of my dad, where I would have much rather have had the more alive, albeit scary, father than the one that he turned into and exited this world as an OT8. I never really got to know my fucking father because of this shit. Anyways, so neither Alley's nor Love's spokesman returned calls for comment, and a spokeswoman for Scientology told The Scoop she had, quote, "no idea why Love thanked the church and Alley." Yeah, sure she didn't. Anyway, so here's a little bit of an exclusive. This is an interview that I did with, let me pull this up actually. This is an interview that I did with a gal named Samantha Broome several years ago when I was just starting out the channel. And again, nobody's seen it because I've had to create multiple YouTube channels and upload everything again. But this is a little treasure that you won't hear in the news, that Samantha Broome, again, she wasn't even a Scientologist. She was just a person looking for a job. 3 days later, she kind of goes under the spell, and her escape story on getting out of Scientology is absolutely crazy. I'll leave a link in the description box to, again, everything we talk about, including this video, and also to the movie Soaked in Bleach, so you can watch that free on YouTube and make your own determination about how shady Courtney Love might actually be. Anyways, back to this frickin' thing. So like I said, she has an incredible story, and she just happened to pick up the phone one night and this was in 1991. This is right after Smells Like Teen Spirit went on the radio. The album Nevermind came out, and they were just about to be, absolutely enormous. So here's what she has to say.
Yeah, and
Get the fuck out of here. Is that true, Sam? Who would come up with $60,000 if they were a drug addict? I assume this is their parents paying, right?
Their parents. I've taken women to the banks and had watched them sign over their mortgages twice. We had no scruples. When it came to regging, they fired me from regging the day that I could not close Kurt Cobain.
What was he doing there?
He wouldn't come in. He was too high. But she called, and somehow Courtney called, and I was sitting in the lobby because it was like a Friday night or something, and a couple of us were sitting around before graduation, and the reg wasn't there. I don't remember what the situation was, but the ED Genie, no, Clark Carr was there, and Clark said, you take the call to me. And I was like, what the fuck? Okay. I can sell the program, sure. At least I can get them in the door for the reg to then sell the program. I knew I could do that much. So I'm talking to this chick for a while, and she's like, yeah, well, my husband, he does hair, he does smack, and he does a lot of it, and he's going to need and I was like, okay, well, we can help, not a problem. Can you get him down here? Or do we need to come to you? And she's like, oh, no, I could probably get him there, but he's going to need VIP treatment. And I was like, right. Okay. And this was 91. It was
1991. Let me just show you real quick, because this will kind of lead into when we get into the conspiracy realm or whatever. You can see here, let me move my ass into this. You can see here, Smells Like Teen Spirit was released to radio on 27 August 1991. On 10 September, it was released as the lead single from the famous album Nevermind, Nirvana's major label debut on DGC Records. And what Samantha's talking about is several weeks, just a few weeks after this, and after they're about to break.
And then she goes,
the plot thickens, huh?
She said,
yeah, wow.
Questions, and I said, well, we really don't do VIP. If you're an addict, you're an addict, but we can certainly come down and talk to him in your place, so you don't have to worry about getting him in the car and this, that, and the other. If you're worried about people seeing him, walk into the hellhole on Olympic Boulevard, And she's like, okay, well, it's Kurt Cobain. And I was just like, all right, just kept going. I did go out with a guy named Eddie once to their house. I had the car, remember? So my Honda, and I drove to their apartment. They wouldn't come to the door. She opened the door. You could see him smacked out on the couch, completely out of it. Never managed to get him in the doors. I think we got put in either doubt or enemy for that failure. The last time they tried to call her, the reg was like, you do it. She talked to you. You had good comm with her. You try it. And so I called, and they had the answering machine came on. This is old time, right? And the answering
Damn it, I almost did it perfect today. I was muted. Thanks for letting me know. I have the sound up. So let me just repeat what I said there. Samantha talked about the conditions. Let me go back a little bit so you can hear it, and then I'll jump in. I almost had the hang of this, my friends. No more camera problems. There shouldn't be buffering. I just have to do a few more lives. There's another one coming later tonight on some Scientology news to get the hang of this, but we almost had it. God damn it.
Never managed to get him in the doors. I think we got put in either doubt or enemy for that failure. The last time they tried to call her,
she said that she got put in doubt or enemy. And what I was saying when I was muted, that's a serious business in Scientology. For Samantha to have missed getting Kurt Cobain, like the most famous, musician at the time, into Scientology. Plus, it was a perfect opportunity because he's vulnerable, he's on smack, and like I described earlier with my dad, my situation, and Kirstie Alley's, if they could get a vulnerable person like that into Scientology's hypnotic drills, it's a possibility that Kurt would have been able to replace his drug habit with the high of Scientology. It is a possibility. It happened to Kirstie Alley and many other celebrities via this very program that Samantha's talking about. And she got in deep shit for not getting this guy.
The Reg was like, you do it. She talked to you. You had good comm with her. You try it. And so I called, and they had the answering machine came on. This is like old time, right? And the answering machine message said, it was him. And it said, we've gone to a deserted island and we won't be returning your call.
That's right when they went on tour, I would imagine, when they went to a deserted island. So Sam misses the opportunity. They go on tour, and the rest is history.
And I left a message.
In a weird way, maybe if he would have gotten hooked on Scientology, his life would have turned out differently. He was trying to get away from Courtney Love, which we'll talk about towards the end, right when he mysteriously committed suicide.
I was, and, talk to you soon.
This is a perfect example of how a celebrity could accidentally get into Scientology. They could come in like Kurt Cobain for drug rehab. Yeah. And before you know it, 3 months later, they're spouting Scientology, and their friends are going, what the hell? Why did you join that cult?
And failure not to get him. It was huge.
You could have hypnotized you in his state of mind. You could have hypnotized him and made him into a Scientologist in a month, and Kurt Cobain would have been out there selling Scientology as the biggest artist. Well, think John Travolta, think Tom Cruise. So yeah, I can more than imagine. Okay, so where does she stand today? A year ago, she did an interview where Scientology, the host, found out that she had some involvement with it and kind of slipped it to her. And Courtney, ever being on her toes, jumped in and did a little ramble about what she called the size. That's what she calls Scientologists. So this is a little more than a year ago. She's supposedly 4 months sober at this time. And let's hear her rather interesting ideas.
The problem is that my man meter is so sucky, as evidence.
Hold on, let me just translate that for the English audience. Her ability to choose the correct mate is sometimes not the best in the world.
I tend to go for people with problems that run very, very deep. And I don't know why that is.
But because in a way, of course, he had problems as well.
Yeah.
Right, so you haven't managed
Change
to...
that
but can you change it, do you think? Or is it just like...
I'm working on it. I mean, I'm a Buddhist now, and I've been, I don't know, Jonathan. I'm going to lay on your couch, and you're going to help me get over this.
Oh, come on, okay.
What are we going to do?
Well, a few things spring to mind. Hey, Courtney, now you mentioned you're a Buddhist now, okay?
Yeah.
By the way, do we have any Buddhists in the house? Tell me if this sounds more like Scientology or The Secret or some kind of new age, think it and you can manifest it type of thing. I've never really heard of Buddhism being the way she describes it here. It sounds quite a lot like, what we did in Scientology.
I believe you've involved yourself in other religions, in other kind of ways of...
Not really. I mean, I've always gone back to Buddhism. I've always gone back to Nichiren Buddhism. When I was 23, I did it. And it worked to get my band together. It worked to get my band huge. It worked to make me wealthy, all that stuff. Then everything I got, and then I wanted to like chanting for a Nirvana tour. I ended up with a Nirvana husband.
Chanting for a Nirvana tour, and I ended up with a Nirvana husband. More like she kind of stalked him. There's a story behind how she kind of went after Kurt and make it seem spontaneous. But I would say she's a narcissist, a predatory person. Doesn't mean she necessarily had him killed, but I've gone down this rabbit hole. Maybe we'll even do a separate video on this altogether. But let's just say she does a lot of lying, a lot of changing of the story. A lot of the evidence was covered up by the police, and it's sus, in my opinion.
Blah, blah, blah. Then I got everything I wanted. Then I quit. But and then I did it again years later. I did it again. I ended up with that wonderful film Larry Flynn. I ended up with a great boyfriend who really didn't have big problems.
But Courtney, let me ask you, do you genuinely believe that there was the chanting that got you these breaks in your life, or was it the fact that by doing that and by being centered on something which was maybe outside of the other things in your life, you know, that you were more able to take opportunities when they present themselves? I mean, do you believe there's some kind of force that you chant and someone says, you know, this is working and I'm going to give this? Or do you think by chanting you become...
I have faith in the system that works. I mean, it's a philosophy more than anything else, but it's also a practice.
Did you try it? You were involved in Scientology for a while, weren't you?
Well, the size, I mean, the size are cool. And
she calls them the size.
I went to the Psy Celebrity Center and had some chicken a few times.
What she's talking about there, by the way, just to kind of give a translation, she talks about she went and had some chicken at Celebrity Center. So this is what they do to recruit. Like, let's say you're Tom Cruise or you're John Travolta or Giovanna Ribisi or Elizabeth Moss. You are constantly scouting for certain people and testing them out to see if they would be a match to be a Scientologist. So rather than bringing them down to the Celebrity Center here in Los Angeles and having the Sea Org members, these intimidating people wearing these fake Navy uniforms, jump on the people or take a course, or they go in the building and get freaked out and see all the L. Ron Hubbard literature and all the drones running around, they have a really nice restaurant where Courtney got her chicken, I would imagine. If I had to take a guess as to how she kind of got into Celebrity Center, it would be something like Kirstie Alley, who was promoting Narconon. She probably knew that Courtney was a drug addict. And hey, just come down to the Celebrity Center. This is part of the love bombing phase. We'll throw you some really good food and some fucking chicken. And hey, while you're here, why don't you take a look around or take a quick tour? That's how it all starts.
Because it's a modern religion essentially, and there's no reason why I don't think it should have the same respect that other religions have. But at the same time,
it gets a little wacky, though.
Yeah. Well, what's strange about Scientology?
Well, there's some wacky stuff. I mean, in my opinion, the guy that founded it, his writing sometimes gets really naff. And as we saw at Tom Cruise's wedding, a pot, a pan, a skittle, a comb, a kitten. I mean, a lot of the writing is like, that's demonstrative of a lot of the writing. And then he rewrote Darwinism, and he wrote that oh God, all sides are going to hate me now. All right.
No, you know what?
He wrote that we come from mollusks.
What she's talking about here, I don't know how she would know about this. She's talking about a book called The History of Man, which is not like an introductory read. And that book was created, by the way, by Nibs, L. Ron Hubbard's son. Hubbard got his son Nibs high on methamphetamine, I believe. And he started spouting what would become the book, A History of Man, where it's said to be the cold-blooded history of all of our past lives for the last, trillion years. And this had to do with, we all started out as clams that were swept from the sea onto the seashore. And that's apparently why we have molar problems, headaches, and all sorts of crazy shit. It's one of the most drugged out, crazy books. It's not an introductory book. And it's just funny to hear her riff on this a little bit.
Wrote that we come from clams,
right.
And when we get upset, now maybe I'm interpreting this wrongly, but that when we get upset, it's because we used to be clams and our hinges are confused. Now I am not trying to pick on. It's just I'm really dear friends with Kirstie Alley. I'm friends with a lot of size, and and she's great because you can absolutely poke fun at her about it and say, what about the mollusks? What about the hinge? Tell me about the hinge.
And her answer is?
Her answer is, it's my religion, and I believe it.
Yeah, that's right.
So, God bless.
That's what I feel absolutely, that they're entitled to believe, everyone's entitled to believe whatever they want.
I have to take issue with that. I've heard that a million times. Everybody can believe what they want. Yeah, they can. But where do actions come from? They come from your beliefs. So the reason Scientologists act the way that they do and are so aggressive is because the policies instilled in them by L. Ron Hubbard. So if you believe those, you therefore act the way that you act. Belief and actions are they're not separated. So yeah, you can believe what you want, but it will affect you greatly.
Hinge or no hinge?
Hinge is unhinged.
I like the sound. I'm actually now quite tempted by it. The whole mollusks theory makes some sense to me, I'll be honest with you. I've long suspected there was a seafood base to my life.
Yeah, there's that. There's an intergalactic overlord, and
She obviously read the OT3 material. She's talking about the intergalactic warlord, the Xenu story, which is only revealed after hundreds of thousands of dollars, many years, and you finally told about the Xenu story and the intergalactic warlord cosmology.
Now I'm hooked. Now I'm sold. No doubt about it. They've got another
I'm
one.
a recruiter. No, I mean they're really nice. You know, I've never met a side that I didn't like.
Courtney,
so.
you know, I didn't know what to expect when I first saw you in the movie. I don't know if you saw Courtney in any of her films.
Okay, that's good on that. Now, back to this. We'll just end off with a little trickle down the conspiracy rabbit hole, but there's way too much to cover. So as we end out of here, you'll notice that on the 27th August 1991 is when the famous single was released. And that brings us to the infamous 27 Club. How many of you know about this? I'll just read this briefly. So the 27 Club is an informal list consisting mostly of popular musicians, artists, actors, and other celebrities who died at age 27. Although the claim of a, quote, statistical spike for the death of musicians at that age has been refuted by scientific research, it remains a cultural phenomena, with many celebrities who die at 27 noted for their high-risk lifestyles. And this was beginning with the deaths of several 27-year-old popular musicians between, notice the dates here, 1969 and 1971. We've hammered home in that whole hippie era and what was going on in Hollywood and California, Haight-Ashbury, Laurel Canyon, etc. Dying at the age of 27 came to be and remains a perennial subject of popular culture. So we have Brian Jones, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and of course, Jim Morrison. They all died at the age of 27 between 1969 and 1971. And let's see what else we got here, just real quick. I guess that's about it on that. We'll end off by showing you, again, there's too much to cover, but briefly what the highlights of that movie, Soaked in Bleach, link in the description box if you want to check it out. Plus, I'll put out some other information going down this rabbit hole. But this is a really good summary by these conspiracy nutters about what it's kind of all about.
Did Courtney Love kill Kurt Cobain? Kurt Cobain, of course, singer of Nirvana, died on April 5th, 1994, a month and 1 day before I was born, after he was shot in the head in his Seattle home. And while police say he was the one who pulled the trigger, Nirvana fans have been arguing otherwise for decades. The culprit, they say, is the woman who is supposed to love Cobain the most, Courtney Love. The case against Love begins a month before Cobain died, when he was hospitalized in Rome after taking too many pain pills. After his death, Love would say that this was a suicide attempt, but others have disputed that over the years, according to conspiracy theorists, Love said Cobain tried to kill himself in Rome because it allowed people to believe he killed himself in Seattle. He was already suicidal, so he must have killed himself. There are other examples of Love speaking publicly about how sad and depressed Cobain was, which they say was more of her laying the groundwork for a suicide motive. But as others who knew Cobain have claimed, he was actually happier than he'd been in quite some time. These inconsistencies and claims that Love was shopping around for a hitman have made her the prime suspect. The leading advocate for this theory that Love was involved in her husband's death is Tom Grant, a private investigator she hired to find Cobain after he left an LA rehab facility and returned to Seattle just days before his death. Grant's website makes the case that Love and live-in nanny Michael Jewett were involved in a conspiracy that resulted in the murder of Kurt Cobain. He cites the suicide note that he believes wasn't a suicide note at all, the lack of fingerprints on Cobain's gun, and the amount of heroin in Cobain's system, 3 times the lethal dose, which Grant and many others believe would have left him incapable of cleaning up his drug kit, putting a gun in his mouth, and pulling the trigger.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
So
he might have just been off his nut on heroin, and she just thought, good opportunity to, or they could have even injected him.
Yeah, and then because I'm pretty sure, 99%. Can you just double check this, Ben? That the gun was a shotgun, wasn't it?
Yeah,
so I think so I'm trying to demonstrate a shot. Obviously, with a shotgun, it's quite long, so it's also like a bit of a a weird one, you know.
A Remington model 1120 gauge shot.
This is reminding me of the many mysterious deaths that we've covered. It's reminding me specifically of the Flo Barnett and Special Project L and Marty Rathbun, where Shelley Miscavige's mother murdered herself or killed herself, committed suicide apparently, using not as long as a shotgun as the one that Kurt Cobain supposedly used on himself, but still it was a shotgun. She shot herself 3 times in the chest. That didn't work. And then 1 time in the head. There's many mysterious deaths in Hollywood and in Scientology as well, it seems.
Yeah. So, you get the end in your mouth and then your thumb on the trigger.
This is a guy who's got access. He can have any gun he wants.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Why would you do it with a shoe? Oh, yeah,
see,
look
that's
at that.
long, isn't it?
Wow.
Don't know about that, Ben.
Oh, man.
I mean,
Ben's,
of all the times.
Ben's testing out his soundboard.
When in Rome.
Fuck's sake.
But it's like, I like that.
That was actually good.
It was,
Skip it together.
Yeah, it's interesting. Especially when you add the heroin as well. 3 times a lethal dose.
You'd have to get your toe in.
He's doing it there.
Oh,
That's a right. Yeah, but what's the length here? That's a rust.
So what would be the motive for doing such a thing? Can you guess?
Yeah,
Apparently,
here we go.
Kurt was going to divorce her.
Oh.
They had a prenuptial agreement, which meant when she wouldn't inherit his stuff. basically.
Okay.
So
We want
after he divorced her, then she wouldn't have got the money. But while she's married,
That's a smoking gun there.
we go.
That's
She 100%
interesting.
done it then, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So he died a suspect, basically.
And how much did she inherit? Check this out. So they had a prenuptial agreement. So if he would have gotten a divorce, she obviously wouldn't get that much. But this is what she did inherit by him committing quote unquote suicide. His estate is worth a grand total of $450 million. And it was estimated that it would earn about $4.4 million a year just from album sales alone. Love inherited both Kurt's writing and publishing rights, which were valued at $130 and $115 million respectively, according to Celebrity Net. Oh my gosh. So that would be a motive. Anyways, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. I'll leave some links, like I said, in the description box about, how deep that goes. But, once you've been around the block and you've looked into this shit a little bit, the mysterious deaths that you guys are talking about in the chat, let me pull some of these up actually. You definitely start to see patterns. Heath Ledger died under very mysterious circumstances. There's a whole, you know what, guys, we got to actually do a 2-hour video on all these stars. We have River Phoenix, who grew up in the Children of God. It's disappointing that his family won't really say much about that upbringing. River was sexually assaulted, raped by members of his own family and the community starting at age 4. Now, what do you think that would do? That's what Hollywood looks for, trauma-based mind control people, so that they can be controlled easily to then hypnotize and control the public. Because as we know, everybody foolishly looks up to celebrities as if somehow they're better than other people. Hey man, I didn't make this world. That's just the way that it works. I wouldn't design it this way. But celebrities are important in Hollywood, and a lot of them have met tragic deaths. And River Phoenix is one where there's a whole nother conspiracy behind that. We're definitely going to do a video on River because I fucking love that guy. That was the guy that inspired me to be an actor. Mimi, Jim Morrison's dad was a JW. I did not know that, really. And he wrote a song called Kingdom Hall. No shit. We also know Jim Morrison's dad was the main admiral who kicked off the Gulf of Tonkin incident, the false flag that kicked off the Vietnam War. And we've covered that extensively in the Laurel Canyon videos, where a lot of the famous musicians that dodged the draft and hypnotized the public in the 60s for peace and love to prevent people from doing too much protesting, just tune in and tune out and forget about the war and just do drugs. That was a whole psyop that we've gone in a great detail about. And Jim Morrison's dad played a part in that. So the anti-establishment people had massive military family backgrounds and shady backgrounds in general, shall we say, not to mention what was going on at Lookout Mountain Laboratories, etc. There is a deep dive coming up on that. That's going to be part 2 of connecting the cults. But yeah, like I said, it's a pretty small world in Hollywood, the propaganda machine, and the actors and musicians who die mysterious deaths, just like Brittany Murphy. That's another one. And yeah, you know what? I do think that Courtney Love is a psychopath, and there would be no limits. So as we've talked about with psychopath H.G. Tudor, if they're pushed to the limit, they can actually do murder. And yes, she reminds me of Amber Heard. I mean, I don't think Johnny Depp was an absolute angel necessarily. He has his own Hollywood connections, but man, talk about being in a relationship with an abuser, with a sociopath. I mean, she gaslit the fucking shit out of him. Anyways, guys, if there's, I think we're going to do another video in about an hour or so, just covering some recent news. At least one more, and we'll roll out of here for now. And I'm just check to see if there's any questions real quick. Stand by. Yep, Philip Seymour Hoffman is another one, which of course relates to Scientology. You know, Scientology in the 80s, that was when it hit its peak. It had 100,000 members, give or take. That includes the Sea Org members, those are the people that signed the billion-year contracts, the staff members who signed 2.5 to 5-year contracts, and all the public, which make up most of Scientology. I would say 90 or 95% of the people that experience Scientology are public like me. I never signed the staff contract. Well, I did. You guys know the story, so I won't bore you with it. I got in and out real quick on staff. I had to fight off joining the Sea Org 100 times, hundreds of times while I was in the cult. But they didn't get me on staff, and most people just go about their daily lives under a hypnotic spell, literally, so they don't break out of the mind prison. I never went on the internet to look at negative information. I was programming myself, so I didn't have to be on staff or in some cloistered environment in order to be held under control. And yeah, Philip Seymour Hoffman, we know he portrayed L. Ron Hubbard in The Master, and I don't know if he was taken out or not, but there's a lot of interesting information around that. Anyways, my friends, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in an hour or hour and a half or something. I'll put up a video 30 minutes before. We're just going to discuss some news today about as if Clearwater, Florida couldn't be taken over more by Scientology or Scientologists. There's some jackass developer, the guy who created the Tom Cruise condos on Cleveland Street, right next to the Mecca of Scientology, Flag Land Base. He's going to develop, or trying to develop, maybe we can stop him, 2 of the biggest eyesores in downtown Clearwater. So we'll see you soon, my friends, and thanks for joining us, and have a good day.
Now, here is L. Ron Hubbard. And you find in each and every case, you're finding the phenomenon of entities, communications, spaceships, other planets, locations, beingness in other states, and all of this, and you find this to be a consistent condition. You have fulfilled this definition of the mesh universe.